There's a new family of Excel functions that are Lambda helper functions. Their entire job is to allow a Lambda function to be used in various ways. In this video, we'll talk about specifically the map function, whose job it is to run a Lambda function on every entry in a specific array in its current position. So the basic premise here is that when we use a Lambda function, which is really just the invention of a calculation that we find useful or important, that we can apply that Lambda function in several different ways. The by row function goes by row, one row at a time down the array. By call goes one column at a time across the array. Scan goes through an array and creates the intermediate or running values as it goes. And reduce is applied against everything in the array, and it reduces it to a single value. But the map function, its job is to perform that calculation on all the cells that are in the array in the same position that they're in. So let's say, for example, that you have a little 3x3 grid like this, and you have all of these numeric values. And you want to apply a Lambda function. Now let's go with an incredibly simple Lambda function, which is that we want to multiply everything by 2. With the map function, what it does is it says, okay, let's take all 9 of these cells and just multiply each of them by 2 like that. And so the result turns into an area that is matching up with whatever fed into it. As opposed to by row, which creates a single column of results, or by col, which creates a single row of results, or reduce, which creates a single cell with the results in it, the map function leaves all the cells exactly where they are. Let's see that in real life. So here we have a scenario where we want to take the sale price and subtract the sales cost and the product cost. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go to formulas up at the top of the screen. We are going to use the logical drop-down menu and find the function called map. And we now need to feed in any arrays that we want to use. So we'll feed in the array of the product cost. Then the second array will be the sale cost. And then the third array will be the sale price. And then the Lambda function says, okay, well, what are we trying to do with all of those arrays? So I will put in a Lambda function, open parentheses, and I'll say that our first array will be called P cost. Our second array will be called S cost, and our third array will be called S price. And then after the comma, we then need to tell it what we want to do. And here I want to take S price minus S cost minus P cost and close the parentheses. And what it should do, as you can see right here, it says, yes, we've got $113.25. So in other words, take $178, subtract 44, and subtract 20, and hopefully it'll get us down to $113.25. And when we click OK, you see what we were talking about with map. We took in an array that looked like this, and we resulted in an array look like this. Now you may think to yourself, well, wait a second, wasn't it these 3 columns? But what we did was we fed in 3 individual arrays, each of which looked like this, right? Exactly this set of cells in a column format. And because of that, the result was a column of the exact same dimension. So now let's look at it in a two-directional situation here. Let's say that we want to find in this data set right here all the cells that contain Christopher Mason. So we're going to go to cell S9 right here. And what we want to do is we want to highlight all the employee cells, in this case K6 through M20, and say, is this Mason Christopher? So we use =map, and we take in that entire array. See how this is different from our previous example where we took in 3 column-based arrays? Here, it's just one big data set. Then after the comma, we are going to do a lambda function where we say, okay, we're taking in the employees. And what we want to do is we want to ask the question, is the employee Christopher Mason? And if it is, let's output Christopher Mason. And if it's not, either output nothing or maybe a dash or something else that we can ignore. So what we'll do here is we'll put in the if function and we'll say, is the employee equal to Mason, comma, Christopher, right there, comma, if it is, let's go ahead and choose Mason, comma, Christopher, and otherwise I'll do quotation marks with 3 dashes, close quotation marks, and close the parens, and close the parens, and close the parens. And what the map function should do is apply the same if function on all the entries in that array. And there it is. All the instances of Christopher Mason show up in each of those different cells. And what's really beautiful here is if I switch to somebody else, it identifies that person. If I switch to somebody else, it goes through and identifies all the places where that person was.